No, it's that was
Welcome back to Archaeology After Dark, everybody. I have my first official guest of 2022. That means you are listening to someone else besides me this time around. My guest today is Brian Mast. Brian, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Daniel. Good to see you again.
Oh, yeah, it's always great to see you, Brian, and have you make fun of me as we go through this program. It's wonderful. So, Brian, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm the educator for the Black Belt Museum at the University of West Alabama. I do everything from designing and implementing educational programs to working on our website, our social media, and playing with our 3D scanning and printing lab.
Ooh, so is that what we are talking about today, Brian?
Exactly. There's a lot of educational opportunities, but also research that can be done with 3D scanning and printing.
So for those of our audience who aren't familiar with 3D printing and scanning, what exactly is it? Like how does it work?
Well, let's start with the 3D printing. That's gaining a lot of popularity here recently. There's two real ways to 3D print. There's multiple ways, but two ways that have become very mainstream. One is using a resin, so a liquid that's exposed to light via screen, similar to your cell phone. And that hardens the liquid, and as it dips down in the liquid and back up on a plate, it actually hardens that and forms it into the shape. It's very popular if you've seen Dungeons and Dragons, the little figures that are made. That's how that stuff is made. If you played the X-Wing game, that's a tabletop game, all those little miniature ships and figures, it's made that way. We're actually harnessing that technology to use it for educational purposes, which it gives a lot of great detail. And because it's being formed from a liquid and that light on that screen, you get massive detail on even the smallest objects that you may not be able to get without looking under a microscope in certain instances. The other way is filament printing. That's been around for just as long and become incredibly popular as well. We use that to print larger objects. So you're taking looks like weed eater line, heating it up, extruding it through a piece of metal onto a bed, and that builds it up to create an object that way. And that is all based on scans, so digital reproductions of real world objects, or if you have the talent, which I do not personally, to create things in the digital space, you can then take that digital file, put it into special programs, and those programs feed that information into those printers and then make that a reality. Or you can use what we've done is 3D scanning. So our uses light, other ones uses lasers to scan an object, take pictures of it, turn it into a digital file, put that in front of you in a special program, convert it to a different file type, or we can make it eligible for us to be able to 3D print that. So there's a lot of different things in there and different technology that's used in special programs, but it is a gateway really to a lot greater research opportunities.
And that's one thing, I've thought about recently is, people have taken a huge interest in 3D printing and not just in like museums and stuff. I think it's because, 3D printing has become so easy. You actually can just buy one and keep it in your basement at home. And it's like a hobby thing, but people also use them for educational purposes like we're talking about.
Yeah, you can go on Amazon and buy a resin 3D printer for under $300.
And you just have it to print little like knick-knack people.
Yep, you can do that. If growing up in the 80s, you have GI Joe figures. You can print out GI Joe figures, little army figures. You can print stuff like that on them, and people use that for their homes to make their own toys or finding cool files they find online at various different sites that are out there for you to do that and replicate them. And we're taking with our educational opportunities are to take the scans of objects that we have in our collection, putting them up online, and then you can request some of those objects from us. And you could if you had a 3D printer in your house, we can send you the file and you could 3D print them from your home to have that copy of that object that you might live 5, 6, 7, 8 hours away from. There you have it at home and you can look at it, and then you have information regarding that. Oh, okay, this is this potsherd from this different time period made with this different type of material on it. Okay, now I found one in my field. I'm going to compare it to that and see. So it's a great way for research opportunities in that, not only from scientist to scientist, archaeologist, archaeologist, paleontologist to paleontologist, but also for individuals at home who have access to this technology that's becoming ever increasingly more popular.
And it also helps with region specific objects. Like I know in the Black Belt, when I was there, you guys showed me a lot of fossils and other artifacts that are unique to that region that you can't actually find anywhere else in the world. And it allows us to digitize those specific objects so someone completely on the other side of the world can look at it and be like, ooh, this is special. It comes from a place that I don't know how to get to. I can't get to the place because I can't actually find it on the map.
Oh, for sure. And it's a great way for teachers with the increase in STEM education. It's a great way for them to be able to 3D print objects to be used in the classroom where it doesn't have to be sent in the mail. They don't have to wait weeks for it. We don't have to print it out, put it with lots of materials and send it to them that way via FedEx or UPS, which are massively overloaded and backlogged on different things right now. Instead, what we can do is we can send them digital files that they need to print, send them the lesson plans that are associated with it, and then they go to their STEM lab in their school, push print, or talk to the individuals running their STEM lab, give them the files, they print the objects out for them, and then they take it to their classroom. And it's a great way to build that relationship with them and allows a small museum like us. I mean, we only have 2 staff members now to be able to make a greater impact in the world. And our object here at the Black Belt Museum is to share the unique natural and cultural history of this region. Because when you start digging into it, you realize that there is so much that took place here, not only within Alabama, but within this 19 county region that affects really world history and tells some of that story.
And the other thing that we need to point out is if you're 3D printing and replicating objects, it helps, not damage the original object so that, that object that you're 3D printing is safe in someone's collection somewhere while you have a nice, crisp model of it that you can just absolutely destroy and not feel bad about it. You can just make another one. But if you destroy like a 35 million year old fossil, wow, that is dust. It is gone. And you have to go cry in a corner now because you can't replace it.
Exactly. You think of going back a little, well, using your 35 million year old example, our state fossil of Alabama is Basilosaurus. It's found in the southern edge of the Black Belt. We have multiple fossils of that creature in our collection, but we want to make sure to preserve them because it's not like we can go out into the ocean right now and find another Basilosaurus. They haven't been around for a long time, very thankfully. Can you imagine a whale that's 65 feet long that has massive teeth? I don't know if I'd want to go in the ocean. And it's a shallow water whale too, so it would live in a couple hundred feet of water. I'm good on that
Yeah,
personally.
I don't want to do that.
So, but the fact that we have those objects and we can scan them and replicate them for ourselves, so we can do different things on how it was used in culturally, where it was used for foundation stones, used for andirons. We can take those objects, replicate them, actually put them and demonstrate their uses while also making that digital file available where if we do pass something like that around, we pass around one of the molars that it had and pretty good, oh, somebody had dropped it and it snapped in half. It's okay. They make glue. Or if it's that bad, we just go home, I push print on my printer, come back a few hours later, boom, I got a new one.
Yeah, that is one thing I don't think people take into account when they're 3D printing. It is a time consuming process. Like if you're printing something large, like I remember we did a not full size saber-tooth tiger skull, but it took us like a day and a half to get that done. And that was just like the canines on it.
Yeah, depending on your detail and the size of the object, have it can take a while. Actually, for right now, I started it. It'll actually be done here in about 20 minutes. I started 3D printing some crow shark teeth, about 65 of them, because they're so small. I can put multiple ones on the build plate and a resin printer. But that's just one example of something that takes not a long time. It's something about the size of a quarter. Now, if you want to print something like full size skull, like you were talking about, if you want to use a resin printer, it's going to take much longer. If you're going to use a filament printer, it's going to take a while. And then you have the process where you have to actually clean up the object. The resin printing, you put supports in different places to make sure that when it's printed, because it's printed from the top up, so it's printed in reverse order. So normally when we think about stuff that's created, it's created from the top to the bottom. On the resin printer, it comes down, prints, comes back up, and goes up and down like this. So you're printing the opposite way that you have on your screen in front of you. So you have to take that into account when you're making it. But also, you got to look at it as it's creating those layers, millimeter size sections, that once it builds on top, it has to have something there to support it. If it doesn't, it's going to fall apart and fail. And the same is true with the filament printers. Filament printers, you put supports in different areas as well, because as it's building out, because it goes in the opposite way, it goes from the bottom to the top. Those supports have to be into place, because if there's any overhang, it's then going to fall apart. So while the machinery is getting better, we're still limited based on the motors that are being used there and the materials as well. We got to make sure we don't run out of filament. If you're printing a full size saber-tooth tiger skull, that's going to take a lot of filaments. You make sure your roll is big enough to where you got enough in there to complete that project, but also you then have to remove all the supports afterwards. You have to any imperfections that might be in there, you have to smooth all that out. So there's a lot of post-processing you have to do as well. So it's not like you push print on some things and you get a perfect object out. You have to do a little bit of work on it, especially if you want it to be for display purposes as well, or for study. I mean, there's an example. I was working with somebody and they wanted to had an object where they sent me pictures of, and I said, well, I can't really tell too great from the pictures. Can you give me a digital file and I can 3D print it here and look at it and do a comparison with some others that I have to give you better information on what the caliber was of the musket ball. And we talked through that, and they had access 3D printing lab, and that's something that we can work on, and you can get better information that way, because it's really hard to drive 12 hours in one direction to look. Oh yeah, that's definitely this. Whereas send the file to my email, I unzip the file, push print. A couple hours later, it pops out. Compare it to one I got. Like, oh yeah, that's definitely this. We're good to go.
It makes me feel bad, looking at my professors, and they had to actually make the 12-hour drive to go get the actual document or fossil or something. They didn't have the internet or email, and I understand why they lose patience with people so quickly.
Well, when I was an undergrad, we're still doing a lot of research with microfilm and microfiche, and you got to go to the library, you got to pull out the viewer, you got to get everything out. Now it's okay. Well, most of the stuff is online. I'll just go home and type in, oh yeah, here it is, or go use interlibrary loan. They scan you the files and send it to you, and you just reach it. Like, oh, this is so much easier than what I remember.
I remember the first time I filled out an interlibrary loan form, and I cried because wait, you can get things from other libraries and have them sit here? What?
And that's been around, but it's very similar in regards into 3D printing, where you're requesting an object from somewhere else. They send it to you a lot of times now digitally, and you just pull it in front of you and use a comparison or read it and do that research associated with it. And I mean, it's the digital technology is really changing how we do research, but also how we do education. It's just so many more opportunities, and the cheaper it gets. Right, the 3D printer that I have is cost me $500, but I can print an object that's the size of well, might be hard to see, but this textbook right here, I can print that. And it can be anything from a fossil to a pottery sherd or a little model of an army man, whatever. And it's amazing to think about the possibilities. And it's like, you know what, we're probably going to go in this direction. And it might be 3 or 4 years later, and boom, there it is.
What really amazes me is that 3D printing has become so readily available that they have them in kindergarten classrooms. These are 5, 6-year-old children, and they are already like mastering a technology that, I hadn't even heard of until maybe like 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, and it's you're looking at universities and community colleges are now investing in what's called additive manufacturing, which if you look at that, it's 3D printing. Uh, and there's multiple jobs out there, especially in the automotive industry, where they're using a lot of 3D printing to manufacture parts. For example, the new Ford Maverick, which is their small hybrid pickup, that Ford just released files that allowed you to download these files and 3D print objects for your truck. So if you want to print a little cup to put in a cup holder or something, you can do that now. It's People are starting to think outside the box with this stuff. And while the industry world is looking at it and the opportunities that's presenting itself there, I think that as this technology gets cheaper and you get individuals uh, who are working at museums and institutions who come from a tech world or just interested in technology. Because me personally, I didn't really get any technology training until I went to grad school and started looking at GIS and taking a few courses there. All this knowledge that I'm gaining on 3D printing and scanning comes from research on my own, talking with other individuals in the field, uh, working with others, getting exposed to this technology where we're actually getting to use it and play with it and do the process of learning how to use it. You get some failures, but also you get some success and learning from that in both ways, and really learning a lot more from your failures at times and from accomplishing things right the first time. And it sort of becomes a passion. And looking at, okay, if I can do this, how does that fit? And how can I reach people more? Especially in an area where you have these unique resources that you want to make available to them. And it's hard to travel all over the place with these copies of with original objects. Exposure to sunlight, exposure to moisture, all of that harms them. So here you're destroying history while teaching it. So instead, let's print it and take it all over the place or give it out to teachers. Say, look, here is a kit designed, and this is what we've done through one of our partners, the Alabama Humanities Alliance now. That they were the Humanities Foundation, now the Humanities Alliance. We're creating pottery kits where there's objects from surface collections. They've been scanned, printing them out, painting them as they are originals, putting note cards with them, and the lesson plan where these go into a classroom if they want to look at how pottery evolved from the first people that were living here in Alabama. They can see that. They can see how they were decorated. They can see what was used for the temper inside of them. And it's a great way for actually get hands on to the object. And then the teacher, if something were to happen during the semester, can email me and say, hey, little Johnny dropped the pottery shard number 5 and it snapped in 2 pieces. Can we get another one? Print, paint, mail, boom, done. And it's a great way to bring those real world resources into the classroom. And if the kids see that, they get to actually hold history in their hand, and it's a lot easier to make that connection for them as compared to seeing that picture in a textbook.
Yeah, and it makes it, it really gives them a real connection to something. Like I said earlier, a lot of the stuff that you guys show people are area specific. So you take that to especially like a local classroom, their heads explode when they see like this was actually happening under my feet 35 million years ago. Well, not exactly under their feet because majority of the state of Alabama was underwater 35 million years ago, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, and it's easy. For example, one of the most popular things we do is shark teeth sort. There's certain places in the state where we can go and get matrix filled with shark teeth that date back to the Cretaceous time period, to the time of the dinosaurs. Bring them and get sort through them. Well, that there's only a finite resource for that. Now, granted, one shark will have on average 10,000 teeth during its lifetime, but that's 65 million years ago. There's only so many teeth that are going to survive through fossilization and coming forward. You also have generations of people coming to these different areas and collecting shark teeth as well. They're being washed out and sent to other places. So instead, through another grant that we got through the Tom Baby Resource and Conservation District Council, we got scans of some of these shark teeth, putting them in with matrix with identification cards. And now I can give a class, hey, you want to do the shark tooth sorting activity? Can give them a container filled with matrix and shark teeth that are 3D printed that look exactly like ones they would have pulled up from the ground if they would go to these sites and get it. They can get that. They can get that identification. Kids get to take them home with them, whatever shark teeth they find. And now, all right, so we got 4 classes from Sumter County. We got 4 classes from Marengo County to get it. I can just take a couple days, print them all up, mix it with the matrix, and send it to them. And we're not depleting the resources out there, because we're still finding from shark teeth that were found decades ago that they're actually new species that are there, but they look so similar to others that we're having a hard time distinguishing them until you actually really sit down and look at these individual shark teeth under sometimes microscopic instances, or getting a lot of comparisons. Okay, well, that's different from this one, but it's not the same as this one. So we're allowing the full view as much as possible, because it happened 65 million years ago, the full view of the Cretaceous ocean to kind of come out and reveal itself. And that's very exciting as well, because we don't know. I mean, we have mosasaurs, and there's so many different species of those, and now you have Jurassic World using them to pull down crab boats as well. So there's a little bit of interest behind that.
I was going to say some creative liberties were taken there, but
a little bit. But which is crazy, because you have a creature that's essentially the size of a school bus swimming in the ocean, and you want to make it bigger. I'm sorry, if there's school buses swimming in the ocean that have teeth like that and eat pretty much anything, are the apex predators of both freshwater and saltwater, well, we don't really need to jazz that up any, in my opinion.
I mean, if it sells a movie, it sells a movie.
It brought notoriety to this creature that has been around. People have known about it, done a lot of research on it. There's been specials on it, Discovery Channel, decades ago, but a renewed interest in it. And it allows us the opportunity to talk about these resources that are within the Black Belt that people don't really think about, or maybe possibly know about, because it's not always talked about in school. And that's where our opportunity is to talk about the heritage of this area and why the Black Belt is the way it is. And it's because of the ocean during that time. And why do we find seashells, and why do we find this? And it's just a great way to make people understand how unique and special this region is.
Yeah, and speaking of that, those of you here in Alabama, you might have heard about this already. It has been brought to, I want to say, the state Senate to make the Black Belt an actual heritage area. I don't know what the status of that legislation is, but I had heard that. I don't know if that's still going on.
It is in Congress right now. There's a bill that's been sponsored. It's approved by the National Park Service from their study. And it is hopefully within this current session, the United States Congress will designate and approve the Black Belt Heritage Area, which would cover a majority of our region, would allow greater access to federal funding for institutions within the region so that they can tell their story for that, because there's so many stories within the region, and there's so many people here who want to tell that story. And this would allow that region to really be able to heighten and allow those individuals to share their experiences and to share that story they have, which is really integral to America's story.
It adds to the whole of America.
Exactly.
So I think this is a good spot for us to wrap up for the day. Brian, you have any last minute, career advice, books you'd recommend? I can't help but notice you're laughing when I say career advice. I kind of laugh at that too.
Well, here's the thing. When I first got here to UWA, which is actually on the 14th, so Monday, it was 11 years ago I started here. And I never imagined 11 years later I'd be learning how to use 3D printers and scanning technology. And here I am, fully invested in it. I got a 3D printer running. I have slicing software that I closed on my computer so we could have a little bit better connection here on my laptop, and just learning about this and the unique opportunities that technology like this presents to us. And it's something that I never ever would have thought of. I mean, I built my own computers in college, but didn't really do anything after that. So I encourage you and anybody else, if you have something that you say it seems kind of fun, explore it a little bit. You never know what can come out of it. I mean, you might discover some sort of technology or learn how to write code or come up with your hobby might turn actually into a career. There's becoming more and more opportunities for individuals who know about 3D printing technology and 3D scanning where they can get jobs afterwards, and they're very specialized but also very secure jobs for that. And having more individuals who have worked in our field, archaeology, paleontology, and public history, within the 3D printing and scanning technology that will allow them to consider us a market, because that's one thing we're actually fighting some of these companies is we're not considered a very lucrative market because of some funding issues, but also the fact that we don't say we're still trying to figure out how this technology most benefits us.
And I think, COVID has brought up, a lot of people's suspicion or uneasiness in our field. They don't see it as a sound investment because most people see museums as dependent on foot traffic and not the other things that museums actually do for the community. If there aren't people actually going into the museum, they don't see it as a functional museum.
Yeah, and from your time with us, Daniel, that we do a lot outside of the museum. So we're in classrooms, we're in the digital space, we're really finding ways to engage that way because we know the limitations that we have based on our region of itself, a very spread out region, but also the resources that are here. We want to keep them here, but also share the wealth with everybody else. So a digital space is a great way to do that and allows us to have great outreach. And let's think about it. Everybody has a cell phone. Everybody. So if we design some of these digital things and 3D scanning especially, but also 3D printing are great ways to get that information to your pocket where that cell phone is. And well, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that was here. So you can take that scan of the Squalicorax, the crow shark. You can take that, you can manipulate your hand. Oh, that's pretty cool. All right, what else does the Blackfoot Museum have on their Sketchfab account? So you can go here and look on it. What else? That's a cool piece of pottery. That's a dinosaur toe bone. That's crazy. What? Dinosaurs? There's dinosaurs in Alabama?
Oh, yes. We have a lot of
yeah, and then that leads you down the path of finding out, all the dinosaur species that are only found here, the most, all the skeletons that have been found here, the dinosaur egg, only one found east of the Mississippi River in North America, was found here. So that leads you down this path, and all we did was provided you that one little opportunity on your cell phone.
Technology is wonderful.
It is when it works properly.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking that when it works, it's great. But then, I also, again, I brought this up earlier. I feel horrible for the people that are in our field that had to do without it and had to maintain their sanity while doing so.
Well, I mean, but we have new problems in as well. We're much more dependent, I should say, on this technology to do our research in many ways. And then when it doesn't work, we have to have the knowledge of those individuals who did research before us, saying, well, if your laptop doesn't work, you have to do this. And you can get the same information that way. So their knowledge and experience is incredibly important too, because not everything works the way it's supposed to, when it's supposed to, ironically.
No. I vaguely recall some times where we were first starting the 3D printer at the Black Belt Museum. We either couldn't get the temperature right and the models came out all melted and janky, or we couldn't get the code to look right and it came out all like, I don't know what I'm going to call this, but this is what
Spaghetti monster.
spaghetti monster. We're going to go with that. That's the thing. It came out spaghetti monster. But yeah, technology is part of what we do now.
Yes, and I think with the greater integration, we can use it and use its advantages. So we shouldn't rely on it, but use its advantages to help us teach the story. I think is incredibly important and one that benefits everybody.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, and those of you who don't subscribe to gender pronouns, that's going to close us out for the day. Thanks for joining us and stay tuned.